Kia ora and welcome to the This is New Zealand webinars, proudly sponsored by the Bank of New Zealand and Migration Cover. My name is Bore Chum. I'm a licensed immigration advisor and also managing director of Migration Associates. And I'm joined by Rachel Beattie over in London.
Kia ora, I'm Rachel Beattie and I work for New Zealand Skills in Demand here in London, and I'll be talking to you later on about how you can find jobs in New Zealand.
Thanks, Rachel. The schedule of the webinar will include an overview of New Zealand that will run for approximately 30 minutes. We will then move over to Rachel over in London, and she will be talking to you about how to get a job in New Zealand. We expect her presentation to go for about 10 minutes. Followed by Rachel will be myself, and I will talk to you about how to get a New Zealand visa. I will go for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session which will be live, and that will run for about 5 to 10 minutes. Listen, we know moving to New Zealand means that you will have a lot of questions. During the webinar, feel free to type your questions away, and we have Susanna Dyson based in London who will answer your queries throughout the actual webinar. So we're here to teach you and give you information about life in New Zealand and how to get that job offer and how to get that visa. We will now move into the overview of New Zealand, which will go for approximately 30 minutes. In this section of the webinar, we will provide you about 4, 5. We will now move into the overview of New Zealand as part of this webinar. This section will approximately go for 30 minutes, and it's designed to give you information about that New Zealand lifestyle. Our population is approximately 4.5 million, and a third of our population live in Auckland. We are a very multicultural country, and our makeup is approximately 70% white European, approximately 14.5 Indigenous Māori, approximately 9% Asian, and approximately 6.9% non-Māori Pacific Islanders. We respect a lot of cultures. We've got a very proud heritage from our Māori ancestors, and our children in schools are taught how to sing and speak Māori from a very early age. In terms of migrants going to New Zealand, we are very accommodating of migrants. We understand the benefits that you will have in our country, and because of our friendly nature, we welcome you with open arms. One of the key differences between where you live and New Zealand will be the weather. New Zealand has a mild temperature and has many hours of sunshine throughout the country. We have mountains in the sea which impact our climate, and January and February are the warmest months. July is the coldest month of the year, and during that time obviously we have winter. In the summer, the average maximum temperature can range between 20 to 30 degrees. In winter, it's about 10 to 15 degrees. You'll note that in the summer, we are encouraged to wear a hat and wear sunscreen because of how hot it does get. So some countries have very big extremes in terms of summer and winter. New Zealand is very, very temperate, and you'll find that given the sunshine hours, you will have that lifestyle of the outdoors and making the most of that weather. As alluded to before, our sunshine hours when compared to other countries is quite high. So if I give you an example, our sunshine hours in Christchurch on a yearly basis when compared to London is 2,143 hours, and London 1,460. When you compare that to Vancouver in Canada, we also rate highly in terms of our sunshine hours. In terms of rainfall, you'll see a big difference between Auckland and Christchurch in terms of the millimetres per year and the average per month. Again, that features favourably when compared to other places in the world. So weather is going to be a very important aspect and one of the biggest changes in your lifestyle in New Zealand. And I'm pleased to say, having lived in London and now living in New Zealand, I absolutely love the weather, and it allows me to get outside and enjoy that outdoor lifestyle. We now move on to housing, which again will be another big change in terms of your lifestyle in New Zealand. We would always encourage our clients to rent when they first get to New Zealand. Most rental properties are unfurnished, apart from the ovens, carpets and curtains, which are the chattels. Rent is normally paid weekly, and 4 weeks bond is to be paid to the landlord. The landlord pays council tax, or what we call rates, and this is included in your weekly rental price. In some areas, tenants do not have to pay for water usage, and we would always encourage people to have home and contents insurance to protect yourself against theft and fire. I would thoroughly recommend that you go to these websites, trademe.co.nz/property and realestate.co.nz. We will be providing you with these links later on after this webinar, but please do take a note of these websites as we go along. Average weekly rental prices will obviously be dictated where you live in New Zealand and how many rooms you'll be looking to rent out. As you can see, across both the North Island and the South Island, rents will differ. In Auckland, for example, a 3-bedroom house is around 850 New Zealand dollars per week, and a 4-bedroom house is 1,000 New Zealand dollars per week. When you compare that to Nelson, which is a city at the top of the North Island, for a 3-bedroom house, it's 390 New Zealand dollars, and for a 4-bedroom house, it's 450. So our advice is to look into where you're looking to live, the city, and then work backwards in terms of what type of house you'll be looking at and how many bedrooms that will be. Okay. Now remember, this is New Zealand dollars, and trademe.co or realestate.co.nz will give you good examples in terms of the houses and what they look like and what you would expect to get for the prices that you're looking to pay. Having been in New Zealand for 6 months or 12 months, a lot of migrants then look to buy a house. The key differences in our houses in New Zealand is that most urban homes are standalone and built of wood. Most of the older houses do not have central heating or double glazing. However, the newer houses are having these features, which makes heating and warmth a lot better in those houses. In terms of buying a house, we have special property features in our newspapers here on Wednesday and Saturdays. We also have open homes in the weekends and during the weekdays, where you're able to actually go into the house and get a feel for the house and look around. In terms of purchasing the house, there are some conditions that are very normal in the agreement of sale and purchase of a house, such as building inspection, the limb, and the title, which are legal aspects of the property and subject to finance. One key difference with purchasing a house in New Zealand, there'll be no chains, which means that you could purchase a house within 3 to 4 weeks and have the keys to get in. Auction is now a very common way of buying and selling a house, which will mean that you would either auction off and bid for a house, and if you're selling, you are reliant on purchases on the day bidding for that house. In terms of auction, it needs to be unconditional, so those conditions of purchasing the house need to be fulfilled on the day. You will be able to speak to a real estate agent who will be able to assist you, and you'll also get some legal advice on how to purchase a home in New Zealand. Very similar to the rental house, the rental costs. Houses will also differ where you live in New Zealand. Obviously, with Auckland having 1/3 of our population, you'll see that the median house prices up in Auckland in New Zealand dollars is the highest. So you're looking at approximately 850,000 New Zealand dollars, whereas in Christchurch in the South Island, you're looking at about 445,000. approximately. So again, just like renting, understand where you're looking to go and live, and then look into the market and how much you would expect to pay for the type of house you would look to buy. You know, is it 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom? Does it have a study? Is there an ensuite? So a lot of factors will dictate what that cost of that house would be. And again, look at those real estate websites, because they're fantastic resources to look and get a feel for what type of house you'll be looking to purchase. In terms of healthcare, you know, we have a very strong and robust healthcare system in New Zealand. We provide free public hospital treatments and healthcare during pregnancy and childbirth. We also have subsidies for GP visits and prescription medicines. We have 40 public hospitals throughout New Zealand, and what we also have what is the ACC, which is an insurance type scheme where you contribute and your employer contributes through your wages, and if you get injured, whether it be on the sports field or in work, if you're unable to work, you'll get 80% of your income paid to you, and you will also get assistance with treatment such as physiotherapy, etc., to get you back on board. So we find that a lot of tradespeople who are looking to get out to New Zealand really like this scheme, because they would be looked after if they were in full-time employment, if they had an accident on work or outside of work. It's a very good scheme. In terms of private healthcare, just like a lot of countries in the world, you can opt to have private healthcare. Okay, there are a range of insurance policies with all different premiums, and obviously your premiums will be dictated on whether or not you've got any pre-existing health conditions. Please bear in mind you are still entitled to free public healthcare services for accident and emergency care. So not everyone chooses to have private healthcare. The only benefit of private healthcare is that if you needed urgent medical treatment, you would not be put on a wait list. The cost of healthcare. Now, this may differ from where you live. In New Zealand, we have a user pays system where you would pay to go to see a GP, and depending on your age, the cost will vary, and the cost will also vary in terms of where that GP is located. It's important to bear in mind that these GP visits are subsidised by the New Zealand government, similar to the prescriptions. Okay. One expensive thing in New Zealand is going to see the dentist, and for instance in the UK, dental costs are very cheap, and we would advise you before coming to New Zealand to have some dental treatment before getting here. So we have a user pays system in terms of healthcare, and that does differ from the healthcare that you may be used to in the country that you live in. I'm going to hand you over to Rachel from London, and she's going to go through education.
Excellent, thank you, Bore. So in New Zealand, for primary and secondary school, schooling is compulsory from ages 6 to 16. Most children will commence school after their 5th birthday. There is a free secular education available in New Zealand, and the years at school go from years 1 through to 13, which is level NCEA. There are zoning in certain areas, so when you are looking at buying a house, it is, you know, ideal to also have a look at the local schools that are in the area and see what zoning requirements there are. Now, we also have the term dates, and the good thing about New Zealand is that our term dates at school sort of work out well with the weather and summer holidays and things like that. So term 1, you start end of January and go through to mid-April. Term 2 is late April to the beginning of July, and then you have a couple of weeks break. Term 3, you'll start in mid-July and go through until mid-September. And then the last term is mid-October through to mid-December. Now, It's really good because you finish up at school in mid-December, it's summer, it's getting close to Christmas, normally your parents are off on holiday as well, and it's just a really nice time of year. And another thing to note as well is that unlike a lot of schools I know here in the UK, you know, if you do need to take your children out of school for a holiday or any other reason, you know, you're not going to get fined for it or anything like that. And you are able to get your child to start pretty much at any time of the year if you are moving over to New Zealand, which does make it a lot easier. Having a look at the primary and secondary school, just the year breakdown and how it all works. Primary school, you're looking years 1 through to year 6, which is normally 5 or 6 year olds through until 10-year-olds. A lot of primary schools, particularly in rural areas, will also offer year 7 and 8, so that's 11 and 12 years old of age. A lot of bigger cities will have a separate intermediate school, but it really just depends on what part of the country you're in. And then you've got high school, so years 9 through to year 13. And year 13 is last year of high school, where you would do NCEA level 3. And NCEA level 3 is equivalent to the UK GCE A levels. Okay. Now, some schools in rural areas will combine all 3 in one location. I mean, when I went to school, I went to a combined primary and intermediate school and then went off to a separate high school. In more rural areas, you will find all 3 in the one school. So it really just depends on where you are in the country. Okay. And New Zealand has got a lot of universities as well. We've got 8 in total in the country. And we also have 20 polytechnics and institutes of technology. And there is government subsidies and student loans available, just depending on obviously how you've gotten over to New Zealand and what visa you're on. And as an example, student loans for the first year full-time for an arts degree is around $3,000, and a student loan for the first year full-time for a medical degree is around $10,000, which I believe is quite reasonable compared to some other universities around the world. And these are a couple of useful websites that we will send out to you after the webinar. It's really good to go on and just have a look at the different schools that are in your area and get as much information as possible. Now, another thing to talk about is driver's licenses, which in New Zealand is really handy to have. We are quite a car heavy nation, and public transport isn't as good as it is here, say in the UK. So the minimum age to apply for your driver's license is 16 years, and there are 3 stages of getting your license. There's your learner's license, which is just a theory test to start, and then you go for your restricted license, which is when you sit a theory test and also have a practical, and then you go for your full license after around 18 months after sitting your restricted, and that's just a practical test. And depending on what part of the world you come from, if you hold a current invalid driver's license, you can drive for a period of 12 months from the date that you arrive in New Zealand. So that's quite handy. You don't have to worry about changing over your driver's license straight away. And you can apply to driver licensing agent to convert to a New Zealand driver's license. All that you need is your current invalid driver's license, an application form. You may need to sit an eye test, and there is also a licensing fee of around $157. Further driving tests may be required depending on what part of the world you're from, but you would be able to check that with the licensing agent once you arrive in New Zealand. So now we'll go on to the cost of living. Some things will be more expensive in New Zealand due to the lack of consumer power and distance. For our GST, goods and services tax, I know it's known here in the UK as VAT, it's 15% on all goods. And New Zealand tax rates on personal income are less than the OECD average. And here's a list of some general costs that are obviously quite important with moving to New Zealand. Petrol, you're looking at $2.07 per litre. A postage stamp to the UK, if you're sending any mail, is $2.20. A flat white coffee, which you'll be drinking a lot of once you get to New Zealand, is around $4 to $5, depending on where in the country you are. Washing machines, now whiteware can be slightly more expensive in New Zealand. You know, a front loader, you're looking at between $800 to $3,000. A top loader around $500 to $1,700. This is when it's a good idea to get in touch with our partner PSS and find out about shipping items over and whether it's going to work out to be more economical. It's also worth saying that in New Zealand, because we've got a lot more space in our homes, you normally have a separate laundry. So a lot of people have a top loader rather than a front loader, which I know they're sort of a dime a dozen here in the UK because there's a lot less space. Televisions, as an example, are quite cheap to buy. We do have a lot of sort of, you know, technology stores that you can go to, a place like Harvey Norman where you can pick up a TV quite cheaply. So, you know, something like that is really easy to buy in New Zealand once you get there. And for a grocery comparison, we've taken some prices from Countdown, which is sort of our Tesco's equivalent here in the UK, or Pick n Pay in South Africa. So this gives you an idea of, I guess, an average shop. I think it's worth saying that in New Zealand, you know, you've got a lot more time to shop around and, you know, look for the bargains, and, you know, you've got more space in your home. A lot of people in New Zealand will buy a big chest freezer, and they'll, you know, buy in bulk and fill up the freezer, and, you know, go to the butchers for their meat, go to the local fruit and veg shop for all their items. So it may seem a bit more expensive, but you definitely have a lot more time to shop around and you know, try and make it as cheap as possible. So you're probably wondering, why make the move to New Zealand? In the 2015 Mercer Quality of Life survey, Auckland was ranked number 3 in the world, and that was based on 39 factors, including housing, recreation, education, and political environment, which I know, especially what's been going on with, you know, in the States and here in the UK with Brexit, you know, political environment is quite important for a lot of people. In the 2016 Mercer Cost of Living survey, Auckland was ranked number 61, whereas the most expensive city is ranked number 1. So as an example, Wellington was also rated 83 in the same poll, and then here in London it was ranked number 12, so slightly more expensive than Auckland and Wellington. And a few other bits of information. I mean, in regards to jobs, you know, the recent job growth in New Zealand is expected to continue. There are 72,000 more people employed now than there were a year ago, and an additional 153,000 people are forecast to be working by mid-2019, which is excellent. Education-wise, New Zealand 15-year-olds scored ahead of those in the UK on reading, maths and science in the United Nations Human Development Report. As I touched on before, socio-political, New Zealand is the least corrupt nation in the world. We're tied with Denmark, so that's a really good, you know, a good ranking to have. In regards to landscape, you know, New Zealand's a very beautiful, picturesque country. TripAdvisor named Milford Sounds the world's top travel destination based on an international survey, and I can personally vouch that it's absolutely amazing there. Population-wise, you know, New Zealand is similar in size to the UK, but we do only have a population of around 4.5 million, which is, you know, quite different to the 63 million here in the UK. and only 5% of New Zealand's population is human. So the rest are animals, and yeah, we do have quite a varied, wildlife in New Zealand, but we don't have any snakes or spiders, which is good. And Auckland, is our biggest city. It makes up 1/3 of our population. More people live in Auckland than the whole of the South Island. And innovation as well. I think New Zealand is the only country where, women were given, we were the first country to give women the right to vote. And in 2006, the Queen, the Governor-General, the PM and the Speaker of the House and Chief Justice were all women, which is just incredible. So in New Zealand, and I think this is very true, this quote, no matter where you are in New Zealand, you're approximately 15 minutes from somewhere spectacularly beautiful. And Roger Stone was a candidate that we helped a couple of years ago, and he said that we're about 30 minutes drive from the beach and just over an hour from the ski mountains. And Roger, we helped him get work in New Zealand as a builder, and he's managed to buy his own section of land and build his own house. And he just said he never would have been able to do that if he'd stayed in the UK. And another reason for moving, and I guess this is probably the big one and the one that we talk about the most, is the Kiwi lifestyle. In summer especially, it's just such a fantastic time of year. If you're lucky enough, you might own your own boat, or you'll know someone who owns a boat, and you can go out and go out sailing and making the most of the beautiful beaches. The Batch, which a lot of people have their own holiday homes, so you go away at Christmas and spend time at your holiday home. And then the barbecue as well. So being out in summer, having barbecues every night for dinner, it's just a fantastic way of living. And now what I'll do is I will talk to you about how to find work in New Zealand. So New Zealand Skills in Demand is a company that was set up after the Canterbury earthquakes. There was such a huge demand for skilled tradespeople to go over to Christchurch and help out with the rebuild. So we were set up after that to help sort of act as a go-between. I'm based here in London with my colleague Susanna Dyson, and we also have a Christchurch office. So we have Glenn Davis, who's based there, and he helps with establishing new relationships with companies and assisting new arrivals into New Zealand. And he's also helped out by Guy Lemon as well. Guy's based in Auckland, and he's also, looking for new relationships with companies and helping people out once they get to New Zealand. We also work with large, reputable and well-established New Zealand companies. And, in the last couple of years since we've been running, we've placed well over 450 candidates with work, which is really handy, especially depending on the type of visa. It's sort of peace of mind knowing that before you even leave your country, you may have a job offer and a job to go to once you arrive. So as I touched on before, we were set up because of the events that happened in Christchurch and all the work that needed to be done over there. The Christchurch rebuild is a $40 billion project, and it is still going. It's likely to take at least another 10 to 15 years to be completed. We're 5-6 years on from the major earthquake and only 40% of the way through the rebuild. So we need thousands more skilled tradespeople to come over and help with that. The central city is to be largely redeveloped and rebuilt, and there are a lot of key anchor projects going on, so things like sports centres and concert halls and hospitals and things like that. And there are thousands of new homes that need to be built in the next 5 years as well. And there's also a lot of repairs needing to be done to the horizontal infrastructure, which was quite badly damaged in the earthquake. But that's not to say that there isn't any other work elsewhere in the country either. Auckland and Tauranga, which are in the North Island, have got an ever-growing population. Residential and commercial building consents have reached an all-time high in over a decade. The growth in residential activity is quite encouraging, as it forecasts that in 2017 more homes will be built in Auckland than ever before. I know, especially in Auckland and Tauranga, they are really screaming out for builders. They sort of can't keep up with demand. And Tauranga is got a big construction boom going on as well. And there have been commercial and residential building consents put in that are totaling around $62 million, which is just massive and great for any tradespeople heading over to New Zealand. So what we need from you to help you try and find a job in New Zealand is we need an up-to-date CV, and we can send you out a New Zealand template of how we like it set up in New Zealand, you know, just so we can get a good idea of your skills and experience. We also need a completed candidate briefing document, so a CBD, and this gives us an idea of more personal things, I guess. So, you know, like who you're traveling to New Zealand with, your time frames, when you'd like to be in the country, you know, if you've got a preferred location. This just gives us a better, I guess, idea of what your plans are. We need also written references from former employees and or clients that you've dealt with, and we also do verbal references as well. We need electronic copies of all your qualifications. We need a Skype username from you, because instead of you having to fly out to New Zealand and do a face-to-face interview, we set you up with a Skype interview. So you don't even need to leave your home to talk to an employer in New Zealand. And a really important part of it is to understand and commence the visa process. And that's what Bore will talk to you about later on in this webinar. Now, skills and demand, we are a small company. I mean, there are many recruitment companies in New Zealand, and we are just one of them, basically. These are occupations that we can help with finding work in New Zealand. We are very construction focused. We do have a few white collar roles that we can help with, so things like chartered accountants, IT professionals, so, you know, software developers and things like that. So don't be alarmed if your occupation isn't on this list. We do have two really good job hunting websites in New Zealand, and that's trademe.co.nz and also seek.co.nz as well. So part of the process, you know, it's quite, there's a lot of things to think about when moving over. So part of the process of moving to New Zealand, there's a few things to think of. The first one is learn about New Zealand, which is what you're doing tonight by logging into this webinar. You know, you need to figure out if this is what you are committed to doing and what you really want to do. The next important point is overcoming any potential issues. Do you have a house to sell or rent out? Do you need to close down a business? Is there, you know, family members or children that you need to let them know that you're thinking about heading over to New Zealand, and are they okay with you leaving? You need to work out when you want to arrive in New Zealand, because with the job side of things, if we're able to get you a job offer, the trade recruiter likes you to be in the country within 3 months. And once you've got that job offer, things do move quite quickly. So you need to have a good idea of when you want to go and when you want to arrive and start work. You also need to gather documents required by us here at Skills and Demand and send them through as requested. You know, the more prompt you can be with that, the better. You also need to get your working holiday visa or engage with an immigration advisor if you need a permanent job offer. So, you know, have a chat to Bore and his team at Migration Associates about that. And you also need to talk to our helpful partners. But, you know, we deal with a bank and a shipping company, a company that sells a great immigration policy for you. So, you know, they're a really good resource, and it's, you know, it does make your move so much easier. And then the next step, and probably the most exciting and fun part, is booking your tickets and getting on the plane to a better lifestyle and opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rachel, for that. I know that a lot of people are looking to get a job in New Zealand, and the key thing is having that job offer is going to allow you to apply for a New Zealand visa. So at that juncture of this webinar, I'd like to go through the New Zealand immigration process and explain to you a little bit about who Migration Associates are. We are a company based in the UK and New Zealand. We have 4 licensed immigration advisors across the 2 countries. We've assisted over 2,000 families and individuals to work and live in New Zealand. One of our strengths is that we specialise only in New Zealand immigration, and we have that strategic relationship with New Zealand Skills in Demand, who can assist our clients to get job offers. We also work with other recruiters, as other recruiters specialise in other areas. And it's important to note there is a huge skills demand for certain skills in New Zealand, and it's such a fantastic opportunity for you and your family to get that job offer and to get that visa and live and work in New Zealand. Where it all starts for us is having you complete our online visa evaluation form. Now, this allows us to evaluate your visa opportunities, for us to understand who you are and your personal circumstances, because that can depend on, you know, what visa you'll be looking to apply for. We can confirm that visa that you'd apply for, confirm the costs and the timeframes, and we can also report to Skills in Demand and other recruiters regarding your eligibility for a visa, because a lot of New Zealand employers would like to see that you can apply for a visa and that you've started the visa process. Visa types. So what I'll do is concentrate on the main visa types. There's a lot of visa types in New Zealand. The one that a lot of people have heard about is the skilled migrant category, which is a category where you can obtain residency. It's points based for things like qualifications and work experience, etc. And mainly you'll need that job offer to get this visa. In terms of age, you've got to be aged between 20 and 55, meet the character and medical requirements. In order to lodge an expression of interest, which is the start, you need to claim at least 160 points. Once you've met the criteria, you will then be selected to apply and given an invitation to apply, and your application can be processed between 1 to 4 months. Now, the recent changes in October 2016 has meant that attaining residency has become a lot harder. So it's really important that you do get advice in terms of how you can claim the 160 points, and also an advice on timing and the cost of the move under the skilled migrant category. Another way to get residency is through the work to residency visa. Again, you'll need to have an offer of employment. You will need to have an offer of employment from an employer who's accredited. You must be earning 55,000 New Zealand dollars or more, meet the health and character requirements. Now, something that's different from the skilled migrant category, which is the category I was speaking to you about before, is that you get residency under this category having worked for that employer for 24 months. So just to clarify, the skilled migrant category, you get your residency ASAP, whereas with this category, you get your residency within 24 months. This visa is approved within 15 working days, so it does go through quickly. And we do find that a lot of young people who don't have any children favour this visa over the skilled migrant category because it allows them to try before they buy. In terms of getting out there quite quickly, it's very commonplace that people just apply for either the work to residency visa or this essential skills work visa. This is a temporary visa, and again, you'll need an offer of employment from a New Zealand employer. You will need to have qualifications and work experience related to the role. There'll be labour market tests, which means that there must be no New Zealand citizens or residents available, and your employer must have shown genuine attempts to employ New Zealand citizens and residents. You will need to meet the health and character requirements, and the validity, so the period of the visa will be dependent on the skill set of that job offer. So for some visas and for some skill set, you'll have 1 year visa. For some skill sets, it's 3. For some skill sets, it's 5 years. If you have a job offer from employer A, you travel to New Zealand, you're living in New Zealand, and you get a job offer from employer B, you can vary the conditions of your visa, of that work visa, and work for employer B. So the point I'm trying to make is that you're not stuck with employer A. Okay, you can move and you can vary the conditions of your visa. Now this is processed within 20 working days. Okay, and it's important to note that once you've got the job offer, in most cases you need to be out there. I mean, once you've got the visa, you've got to be out there within 3 months of that visa being approved. Okay. There have been recent work visa changes in Canterbury where the validity of the visa has decreased from 3 years to 1 year in certain occupations. But we'll go through that with you in terms of detailing how long your visa's for, when you're required to get there, and the timeframes that are involved. For those of you that are 31 years and under, there is an opportunity to apply for a working holiday visa. Immigration New Zealand have schemes with different countries around the world. I thought it'd be useful just to feature the British scheme here, where British citizens can apply for a 23 or 12-month working holiday visa. The purpose is to holiday. You can work for 12 months with any employer in any role on a fixed term basis. And once you're in New Zealand, you can actually convert from a working holiday visa into a work visa or residency. Okay, so again, you can work in any occupation, and this is approved within 2 to 5 days. So the turnaround is quite quick. Once it's approved, you've got 12 months to enter New Zealand to validate that visa. As there are a lot of visa categories and there's a lot of information, it's important that you do have an immigration strategy. It's important that you understand how all the visas can work together, what documents you'll need, what processes that you need to go through. You need to understand the timeframes and the cost for budgeting. Okay, so some people apply for a work visa along with the skilled migrant category visa. Some people apply for the work to residency and the skilled migrant category alongside each other. And some people apply for the working holiday visa and then go on to apply for a work visa. But to get an overall sense of what your future holds in New Zealand, it's important to have that strategy in place, because us humans like control. We like to understand the end game, and understanding how the visas work to achieve that end game will be very, very important for you and your family. In terms of medicals, police certificates and occupational registration, every application you submit, you'll need to meet the health and character requirements, and you'll need to submit a medical and a police certificate. Medicals are valid for 3 months, so we would only advise clients to obtain medicals once you've got a job offer in place. Okay, these medicals can be done with a panel of doctors close to you in your own country. Okay, you'll need a general medical certificate along with a chest X-ray certificate. Okay, in terms of the character, you'll need to obtain a police certificate, and we would advise for you to obtain that as soon as possible. They are valid for 6 months, and you must disclose all criminal convictions. If you don't disclose your criminal convictions, you run the risk of having your application declined by Immigration New Zealand. In terms of occupational registration, some occupations will require you to obtain New Zealand registration, and this is another extra step in the visa process, and for some occupations it can be complex and time consuming. Employers in New Zealand will want you to have registration because they can only employ you in that role legally once that registration is obtained. We can assist you with the process in terms of registration, but if you're one of these occupations up here and other occupations that need registration, we would advise that you need to understand the process and apply for that registration as soon as possible. So I've gone through this very briefly. There's so much information that we could go through, but why use Migration Associates? We are licensed with the IAA, which is the regulatory body in immigration advice in New Zealand. Because of that, we understand the visa process, the immigration law and policy, and that leads to a high success rate and less delays for our clients. We can assist with document procurement and advising you on what documents you need and ensuring that those documents are sufficient. We will liaise with Immigration New Zealand and your employer on your behalf to ensure your application is going through smoothly and that we have all the documents from your employer. As alluded to before, we would create an immigration strategy with you so you understand the end game. You know, our staff love the paperwork because we need to understand and make sure that you have the right paperwork so we can get you through the process. Unfortunately, it's very paperwork driven, and failure to have the right paperwork will lead to delay. So we're here to make sure you have the right paperwork so that things can go through smoothly. Ultimately, we'll save you time, money, and limit your stress levels because you'll have a lot of other time that you need to spend on other aspects of your move. We will push you along the process to also minimise delay. Following this webinar, we'd like to organise a consultation with you that can be in person in the UK or on Skype if you're not in the UK. This will be the biggest decision you'll make in your life. Sit down with the licensed immigration advisor to understand your visa eligibility, the costs and the timeframes, and have all of your queries addressed before starting this process. Okay, time and time again, people come to us thinking that they know the process, but have got it wrong. Okay, so we're here to channel you through the process to make it easy to get you from A to B and to get you living and working and enjoying that lifestyle in New Zealand. We have a variety of social media channels where there's a lot of information on New Zealand, so we encourage you to like our Facebook page, join us on Twitter, and have a look at some of the beautiful photos of the landscape in New Zealand on our Pinterest portal. So what's next? What we'll do now is go into our Q&A session, and we'll email you with more information about the next steps, and we'll also provide you links to our key partners who can assist with other aspects of the move. Firstly, I'd like to thank Migration Cover and the Bank of New Zealand for sponsoring our webinar. If you'd like more information about the insurance packages that Migration Cover provide, please do email Migration Cover. We'll give you an email address at the end of this webinar to get some information about that. Some exciting products there for you. We'd also like to thank the BNZ, and again, we'll provide you an email address where you can get information on banking, how to get a mortgage, etc. in New Zealand. We also work with MoneyCorp, who can help with foreign exchange transfers. With the exchange rate at the minute, it's really important that you do as much as you can to get as much of your money converted into New Zealand dollars to help you make that move and to settle in New Zealand. And for those of you who are based in the UK, we thoroughly recommend you contact PSS to understand how to ship your household effects out to New Zealand. Again, a link and an email address will be provided to you at the end of this webinar. So those contact details: Matt Williams from MoneyCorp, matt.williams@moneycorp.com, and the website to go to is moneycorp.com. The Bank of New Zealand, please email bnzmigrant.banking@bnz.co.nz, and the website to go to is bankofnewzealand.co.nz. In terms of removals and shipping your personal effects to New Zealand, if you're based in the UK, contact John Moynes from PSS, John m@pssremovals.com, and the website there is pssremovals.com. And last but not least, contact Chris Galway in terms of insurance policies to head out to New Zealand, such as travel insurance, and also protecting your move. It's such a big move that if family were to pass away, etc., you are insured for the cost of coming back to your home country to attend such life situations such as those things. So it's a big move, and you're able to insure aspects of your move with some of these insurance policies and Migration Cover. It's Chris Galway at migrationcover.com, migrationcover.com is the website. Okay, so lastly, we'd like to thank our sponsors, again, Migration Cover and the Bank of New Zealand. Your support is really valued for these webinars.